JJ the CPA here. What we're going to talk about here now is what kind of entity should you be, and I want us to focus in on a couple of things with this. We're going to differentiate between the legal entity and the tax entity, if you will, or the tax classification. So many people, and I'm talking about attorneys and CPAs, still get confused by this very issue, and that is this. When you go to the Secretary of State, you're going to set up your legal entity. It is not there that you then select if you're going to be an S Corp or a partnership or a C Corp. You can't. That is only something you can elect with the Internal Revenue Service. What you're going to do at the Secretary of State is just set up your business. You're going to formalize it. You're going to make it legal. You're going to give birth to it. Okay, you're going to give it a name. You're going to say who the registered agent is, which is, it tells the public not who owns it, who they need to contact if there's any reason to contact the owners of that corporation. And then once that's done, you then decide if you're going to be a C Corp, an S Corp, a sole proprietorship. By then you're already an Inc. You're already incorporated. You're already an LLC or an LLP or whatever the entity is. That does not really determine how you're going to be taxed, other than if you select to be an Inc., you can either be an S or a C Corp. If you elect to be an LLP, well, then you can only be a partnership. But here's the thing I want you to focus in, and I don't care who you are, these are two completely separate issues: legal formation and tax classification. So do not let your attorney, as wonderful as attorneys are, but as arrogant as they are, when they deal with businesses and they talk about the setup, they will make all these decisions for you as it relates to the tax classification and getting your EIN. Shame on them. Shame on my friends that used to do that before I convinced them that they needed to hand that over to us. Because here's the thing, the lawyer sets you up and they're done. They are done. They don't care if they ever need to talk to you again. Not saying they're bad people, it's just what else is for them to do to set up your entity. You're going to get with your CPA, get with us, and figure out how should it be taxed. Now, the first start here is figure out what kind of entity you should be. What kind of business are you going to be will determine how you should be classified at the tax side, and then it's the CPA that should communicate to your lawyer, we're going to be taxed like this, here's how we believe the tax is going to help them, and then that lawyer's job is to go, okay, well, with that classification, here's what we recommend. The lawyer's doing a great job, but their job is to put together a business that's protected, that shields you. That's it. And to help figure out who the owners are and what happens if you implode or you sell or if you have partners or shareholders. That's what they're figuring out. They're not figuring out how you're going to be taxed. They're not figuring out your financials. They're not figuring out anything that's going to be dealt with year after year after year after year after year. Yeah, they might deal with lawsuits, but it's not every single year. So when you're getting with us or your CPA and you're figuring out the tax classification, that is completely separate. And you don't necessarily need to figure all that out in advance by yourself. Before you do any of it, come up with the most general name possible so you can get started, like I said in another video. Get with your CPA, say, here's the kind of business I'm going to have. They'll ask you a series of questions. How many owners are there going to be? How big will it be? And of course, everybody's going to say, well, it's going to be the biggest company in the United States of America. We're going to make $58 million in our first year. You're going to answer some realistic questions with them that will help determine the best way for it to be taxed. And how is it that you know it's the best way to be taxed? What do you think that is? To pay the least amount of tax, right? So do you want an attorney as brilliant as they are and they got their name on a building and they charged you $1,000 an hour? If that lawyer is coming up with your tax entity status as well as the elections and getting your tax ID number, that lawyer's disgusting in my mind, unless they're a CPA and they're going to do your tax returns each and every single year. You get with your CPA. I don't care about what the lawyers think about what I'm saying right here, and if you're a lawyer and you're starting a new business, then don't do what I'm talking about here. Get with the CPA and figure out how you should be taxed. But again, the reason for that is to pay the least amount of tax. Early in my career, I met with a client. They got with their lawyer, they paid him $1,500, and they were set up as an LLC. And at the time in my state, the LLC could only be a partnership. That was long ago, so don't sit and argue with me that an LLC can also be an S Corp, because I know that it can in this day. But back when this was first in my state new, an LLC, you could only be a partnership or you could be a C Corp, period. And I sat down with them and I showed them how the kind of business that they were going to be in, which was a consulting business in the computer field. And I said, you really want to be an S Corp? It's going to save you 15.3% every single year you are in business. If you just make a net $100,000, it's going to save you 15 grand. And if you're in business for 20 years, it's going to save you $300,000. You know what the client said? I mean, literally. Well, gosh, I mean, we talked to our lawyer and they just felt like this was the best entity. And I said, are you going to deal with that lawyer again? Like, well, no. Are they going to file your tax returns? No. But we already spent $1,500. Okay, so you want to spend $1,500 and not have to retract what you did, not go back to that attorney and say, yo, you didn't give me good advice. I need you to fix it, and I'm not paying you a dime more, because it didn't take a lot of time for you to do it in the first place. They didn't listen to me. They literally didn't hire me, and I refused to work with them. They're still friends, but I refuse to work with them because they would not be an S Corp. And why? Because the S Corp is going to yield, in their circumstance, the least amount of tax. So who the heck do you want to listen to? The person that's going to save you tax every single year, or the lawyer that's going to deal with you probably one time? Okay? Lawyers are necessary because CPAs cannot set up the legal entity and go to the Secretary of State, so you need a lawyer. But from the CPA perspective, they're going to deal with you year after year after year. And that is why you need to figure out what's the best tax structure to save the most amount of tax. All right, hey, thanks for listening. Got more of this series to come. Don't miss out. All right, and then don't you ever forget, you've never met a CPA quite like me. Don't you ever forget, you've never met a CPA quite like me.